Every generation thinks that they live in amazing times. We live in amazing times. We absolutely do. We're in the beginning stages of a fourth industrial revolution, right? Where everything's going to change about how we work and how we play, how we live every day. It's a great time to be alive. And that means also that the future is going to be remarkably unpredictable. Everything we take for granted today is going to change over the next few years. Everything. Including our cities. Our cities are at the beginning of a massive transformation. And part of the reason for that is they don't work very well today. They don't work. If it takes you 40 minutes or an hour to drive 12 miles to work, our transportation networks are broken. Right? We feel this every day. This is not some sort of abstract idea. We are living in cities. We experience it every day. And they're growing rapidly. The United Nations says about 2 to 3 million people move into cities every single week. Every single week. It's a remarkable amount of new people that are putting more stress on infrastructure, drinking more of our limited supply of clean water. Our cities have brought more people out of poverty than just about anything else that we've created. They're a great success. Cities have been an amazing success for transferring extreme poverty into a middle class, into a better life for more people than anything else. But they've also created a lot of exhaust. Factories and chemicals that spew toxins into the air and into the waterway systems. And of course, our great lives around the world and here in Budapest, we're creating a lot of garbage, a lot of trash, right? And in the middle of the most beautiful ocean in the world, the Pacific Ocean, there's a heap of trash that is bigger than the size of France, right? Made up of plastic. And by the way, that plastic grinds and grinds as the ocean moves, and it grinds into little beads of plastic. And guess what? The fish eat the plastic. And we eat the fish, right? The plastic, the chemistry becomes part of us. I don't think we even know what that means to our survival, to our health. As those chemical elements bond with our own DNA, what does that mean to the future of humans? So we have significant challenges to be able to cope with, as our MC said, almost 70% of the world being urban within the next 15 to 20 years. You will live your life in a city, so will I. Your children will, and your children's children. We are becoming an urban planet where our destiny as humanity is in a city context. But most of our systems are fragile. This probably looks familiar to you when you think about a government office. This is how we interact with government when this is how we want to interact with the world. We don't want this, we want this. There's an amazing opportunity to move millions and millions of inefficient, expensive, analog services to a digital world. The digital transformation, the opportunity of the digital transformation hasn't even really reached cities yet. And so all the opportunity is ahead of us. I think that's kind of exciting, right? Because if you're in that business or you want to build a business or you want to serve that business, the billions of dollars or trillions over the next couple of decades are still to be realized. There's still a great opportunity there. If we're going to have clean cities, with abundant clean energy, with great transportation, with good health systems, good education, and we're reinventing it all, we're going to need a new platform, a new operating system for our cities. And I'm not just talking about software and hardware. I'm actually talking about how we think about the human destiny, the future of our humanity. That's the new operating system. Now, might blockchain, for example, be part of that? Who knows? We're talking about different ideas today. But blockchain's kind of interesting. I think you'll agree. It's interesting because we should explore it. What might the role be of something like blockchain technology in the future of our cities, and as it can contribute to a new operating system? Well, let's explore that. I'm going to share with you today a few examples to put this in context, so it's not some esoteric idea. The great shipping company Maersk, they move billions and billions of products, dollars worth of products around the world every single month and every single year. And when, for example, they move bananas, okay, we can all relate to that. Bananas from South America to North America, on either side of that transaction is a lot of paperwork, right? A lot of paperwork. It could be 16 interactions on one side, 32 on the other side, where people have to fill out forms. And here's a surprise. Here's a great surprise. Not everybody is honest. This was a great shock to me. And what do? They mess with the paperwork. They write the wrong numbers in there. They write the wrong products so they can take advantage. And because of that, our import-export systems all over the world, which are worth trillions of dollars, are subject to masses and masses of fraud. How might we fix that? Well, what happens if we store those transactions on either side of the loading and unloading of product? How about we store it and we record everything in a blockchain? Maybe that reduces fraud significantly. And Maersk is trying that. This seems like a very compelling thing to do. Now, one of my favorite examples, and it's still experimental, is how we distribute money to people after there's a natural disaster or some great issue in the world. And so, of course, when we all contribute, as we do many times, to these great events, we want to make sure that the most amount of money gets to those that need it, right? And so there's a supply chain of money from the giver, which is all of us, to the receiver. Well, again, although it might be a surprise, not everybody is honest. And the money doesn't always go to who is deserving of it. So the United Nations is using blockchain technology to move money from the source to the people who need it, so they can keep more of the money and know that along the way there hasn't been a lot of fraud. And so I explore a ton of technologies in my life and in my work, and what I've noticed is suddenly I hear a word that's always existed, but suddenly I hear it all the time. Maybe I didn't know the meaning of it. Now I know the meaning of it. And there's this word called provenance. It's always existed, but now it's a defining characteristic of blockchain and how it might help cities in the future. Because you know what? There's an interesting thing I discovered, right? When you work in a city, it's all about constraints. There's never enough time, never enough money, never enough talent. There's too many things to do. All about constraints. But the one thing that's in abundance is data. The one thing that's in abundance in cities is data, and we don't use it to the extent we could. We certainly don't use it to the extent that the private sector understands the use of data for propelling their organizations forward. So cities gather tons of data, they store it, they use it, right? So because of that provenance, which means storing all the transactions from the origin of the data right through to today, becomes very valuable. Think of all the things that governments do, from birth certificates to wedding certificates to driver's licenses to all sorts of certifications and parking tickets and more, right? Provenance becomes really valuable. We don't want that stuff to be messed with. We want to know what the entire history is. Right? Of course, the other word that defines this, what's different from traditional database technology versus blockchain technology, is historical information technology has always been about trust, right? You trust that the person who logs in is the person who says they are. We know this is not always true, right? We want to make sure that who edits information is the person allowed to edit. And it all relies on this massive system of trust. It's the greatest weakness, by the way, in the information ecosystem, is that we have to rely on trust. And that's why so much of what we do is vulnerable, risky, why there's so many cybersecurity issues and other limitations today. What happens if we eliminate the need to rely on trust? Not that trust isn't important. And so blockchain introduces to us this idea of being trustless. Not that you don't need trust, but not that trust isn't important, but that you don't need to have trust to make this all work, right? That's really valuable in a government context, because then we can start to do some really interesting things. Now, the most incredible advantage to democracies in the future will be the availability of voting online, voting on a smartphone. Now, we've tried stuff, right, with mixed results. In the United States, we're inclined to go back to paper ballots because we don't trust any of the electronics anymore, right? Right, but wouldn't it be great to be able to vote on a whole range of issues? Not every 2 years or every 4 years, but maybe in a city context every month or every few months, right? And so this idea of both provenance and trustlessness may allow us for the first time to be able to have online voting. Online voting. This is a dream to have this. And the city of Zug in Switzerland, they're trying it using blockchain technology. And we're looking at this really carefully because we want to see what happens. Will it work? Can it be scaled? This is a big advantage to the democracies of our cities. And we want to look at broader uses. Who are the cities that are embracing this technology, taking bolder risks? Who's taking bolder risks? And Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, a city known for being innovative and trying new things. They're planning to move many of their city operations from traditional client-server information systems to a blockchain infrastructure. I've met these guys. I'm going to see them in November again. I want to see how they're doing. They're really brave. They're really brave, right? Because they're using technology that isn't yet proven. But sometimes when you're an innovator, you have to do that. You have to push the envelope. You got to try things before they're fully fleshed out, before we're fully confident that they're the right things to do. And so when we look just a few years ahead and we think about what are the great changes that are going to happen in our cities, where will we see the changes? Of course, they're going to happen across the economy, but we're going to see them in two major areas, both of which I believe have been spoken about at this conference exhaustively. One is transportation. The transportation game is going to dramatically shift over the years ahead. Yes, autonomous vehicles are coming. Humans will not drive cars in the future. If you have a child in your life, whether it's your own baby or you have a friend's, you have a relative, a nephew or a niece, it's likely that they'll never own a car. It's likely they'll never have a driver's license. That's a child today. And so coming to our cities soon is a whole fleet of a multitude of vendors providing autonomous vehicles, changing the very nature of how we design cities. Because when you have autonomous vehicles, you don't need stop signs and red lights and green lights and directions. You don't even have to have lanes. Cars will figure it out. They'll negotiate with each other. And how might they negotiate? How might they negotiate? Well, they could use blockchain technology and use smart contracts to negotiate with each other. For example, who can go and who can stop. You might pay a little extra to go faster to your destination because the self-driving vehicle will negotiate with other cars saying, we have a premium on this vehicle with this driver, or this passenger, because there'll be no drivers, right? So it's possible that blockchain will become central to the autonomous future of our cities. Now the question is, what can you do next? Because this might be interesting to you. What can you do next as it relates to blockchain technology, whether it's in a city context, if you work for a city, or you work for a non-for-profit or a for-profit business. This is the time to learn more. Even if you're skeptical, this is the time to learn more. Because it's going to be knowledge in our fourth industrial revolution society that will create a positive advantage for you, because your competitor is going to be a computer. Right? It's going to be automation. It's going to be artificial intelligence. Right? Learn more about it. And then, if you're feeling really brave, if you're feeling really confident and brave, I suggest you experiment. Try something. Try it yourself. Try it in your business. Many of the technologies related to blockchain are open source. You could just download them and start to play with things. It's more accessible than ever, although, by the way, it's still hard. It feels like the internet did in sort of 1997 versus 2018. It's a little bit harder. It was a little bit harder then than it is today. And so the question becomes, what role can you play? What role can you play in the great transformations across our economy in the years ahead? What can you do to innovate and think differently? Because this is not just about the future of our cities and the future of our society, but it's about your future. The things I've spoken about today, and I gather the things that others spoke about today, are very personal to all of us. Right? And you have to make a choice about the role you're going to play. So it leads me to ask you the question. The question is, what role will you have in building the amazing digital future that we have together? Thank you very much.